let's talk about how Pacey became the star of Dawson's Creek. This is a topic that I've wanted to talk about for a while because, I don't know, in the kind of nostalgic world of Dawson's Creek, it's kind of a joke. Um, for example, the writers made a comment that while writing season two of the show, so there's like 6 seasons, I want to say, season two, pretty early on, they started to call it Pacey's Pond instead of Dawson's Creek. Just this, affectionate name for just something that was taking place during the show. So I think part of it is Josh Jackson, super charming, right? Charmed the audience. His chemistry with Katie Holmes, I think, left the writers no choice but to depart from the original plan, the original relationship that inspired the show, which was childhood best friend soulmates. And instead, they had to start to write to Joey and Pacey and their relationship, which actually ended up spanning, I think, over half the show. It was meant to be like a little detour as just like a fun piece of drama. It was kind of like a soap opera melodramatic type of show. But I think if you were to count it out, yeah, Joey and Pacey were together probably over half the show in some form or another. So yeah, Josh is a great actor, and we'll talk about chemistry, between him and Katie Holmes. But I think like there has to be more to it. How did the love triangle come to seemingly lean like 95% in Pacey's favor? I don't know, like that's just a number I made up, but it really does feel like that. For one, it's hard to even find like Dawson and Joey nostalgia, anything, content, mostly because I think they have like only just few scenes of them romantically together. Um, and partly because people hate Dawson. And we'll talk about I'll touch on the Dawson hate, but I want to focus on the Pacey success even more. So yeah, Josh and Katie have great chemistry. One thing I noticed is she's very relaxed in scenes with Pacey, and she like is teasing around him, and he's teasing towards her, but yet also kind of reverent in a way that I think is unique and very charming. One of the lines I really love is Joey's like nervous about college or something like that, and Pacey says, "I wouldn't bet against that Potter girl." It's like they tease, but at the end of the day, they're both kind of the underdogs rooting for each other. So that's kind of their dynamic, and I think why it's so compelling. With Dawson and Joey, they don't really like banter and tease as much as they have like deep discussions where they often seem to disagree. And it's written as if that's like more intimate. Like I feel like it was meant to be seen and like played as if that was like more intimate than teasing. But honestly, it comes off more like petulant and siblingy to me, and I think this is because, in large part, like just the way that um, James Vanderbeek and Katie Holmes like seem to like play into the intensity of it. Again, there wasn't like a whole lot of like lightness and fun and laughing in their dynamic. It was like often a serious argument all the time, and that just doesn't feel very romantic or very like fun to watch on screen. Another thing about Dawson is like when you think about it, going back to season one, he seems like a prime heartthrob, candidate because he's moody and he's deep. But there's something that they did wrong, okay? And it's this. If it was a love triangle between Dawson and Joey and like Jen, like it was in season one, or just fill in the blank like a different girl, I think, you know, the audience in season one and onward would have considered Dawson's thoughts, all of his internal processing, as part of his self-exploration. He is the main character, and because it's the 90s, that self-exploration is meant to lead him towards a girl. And I think that would have made sense. Like I remember in season one thinking, oh yeah, when Dawson's with Joey, he kind of has these more like authentic, real conversations. When I think about this one's like so horrid. It's just like so weird, but I think it actually is like one of the cutest moments with those two, and that is there's this line about like walking your dog. I don't know, it was some network television censorship thing. You can look up what it's supposed to mean, but it's this funny line where Joey is so concerned that they're growing up and they're not going to be able to talk to each other about things. So she needs him to tell her about this very personal, private thing that he does. And he's like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to tell you that. And she's like, see, our friendship's ruined. We're not kids anymore. Da da da. She leaves. She climbs down her little ladder, rows her little rowboat home. It's actually so funny. And then he yells out his window, like, in the morning, watching Katie Couric or something like that. And it's actually played quite funny. Like, I think it's just a lighthearted moment where he's being authentic. In contrast to in season 1 when he's with Jen, he's like playing into these grand romantic gestures, and it just feels kind of inauthentic and like trying too hard. So I feel like that dynamic sort of made sense. However, the love triangle is between Joey and Dawson and Pacey. It's about which guy Joey will choose. So Dawson, like, carrying on, talking, pontificating, like he's the main character, is like, so it's very annoying, right? This is Joey's decision. She's the one that has to choose. She's the main character now. So why would she choose like this egotistical guy that is always talking about himself and his feelings, right? Like I feel like that's when the change really shifted. So Pacey looked better in comparison just because he was a secondary character and can kind of let her shine a little bit more. But it's not just that. I think at the heart of love stories, actions really do speak louder than words. I feel like there was always this conception that, love stories are full of these, like, this epic dialogue and this, like, these big calling out, running after the person, declaring their love kind of lines. And I think that's true, but I think the reason why those come across so strongly is because they're intentional and sparse. They, like, catch you by surprise and they, like, steal your heart in that way. They become meaningful. So I think of Jane Austen, just because I love Jane Austen, as an example. And there's just these, like, quiet declarations. There's these quiet moments throughout the books where the characters are realizing their love. And it's so powerful because it is so sparse. And you can think, okay, well, that is just like, I don't know, a very old-timey traditional form of love. But then I think of like The Notebook, which I'm not like super familiar with The Notebook, but I've seen it. And it's known for being like super dramatic, over-the-top love story. But if you think about it, like the scene where they're crying in the rain, and he says something like, he's like, I wrote you every day, like I wrote you letters. The reason why it's so powerful is not because he's like standing there being like, I love you and I've always loved you and we're connected and you're beautiful. It's not all of that. It's him saying that he wrote her every single day and she didn't know because the letters were being kept from her. So it's almost like that sparseness of the dialogue, the fact they weren't able to communicate, is what makes it so powerful when that moment finally comes. So, well, the Dawson and Joey dynamic was like very open about, their love for each other. It was like, it's almost like the show wanted us to praise that they're just like so connected and they're best friends and they're soulmates and they're, they've always been there for each other. It's like, it's boring when they're just continually talking about being in love with each other and yet like all they do is argue. It's like, it doesn't really garner much interest. Whereas, love that is quietly shown and pined for, which we get that with Pacey and Joey over and over again. I feel like that's what really draws people in. Now, had there been a world where the Joey and Pacey romance was like this big whirlwind, like super romantic, like she just like totally changes character and kind of decides she wants to like be with the bad boy and go be wild or something. I don't know. Okay. Could that have happened? Honestly, I think that's what the writer's intent originally was. Like in season 1, when they're planning out season 2, they were like, she'll have a short stint dating him. It'll be like this weird thing, and it'll just like bring her back. It'll just add some drama, bring her back to Dawson. I don't know. That's what they always said. Had Dawson been really supportive up front, been her friend, been there for her during all the fights, like genuinely just, enjoyed her friendship and time, and they continue to have these kind of sweet moments. Could things have gone differently? Could it have, maybe gone a different way for the fans? Maybe. Maybe if Pacey and Joey hadn't like, electrified the screen the way they did, right? I mean, this is a pair that is very comfortable together on screen. And they have so much time to work with it. It still surprises me that knowing that the writers wanted Joey and Dawson to be together, that they gave Joey and Pacey so much screen time. I think that they were trying to like show Dawson doing the longing thing, but he did it in such an annoying way. Like it was like he was always mad and kind of upset, and like that just did not. I feel like that's not the purpose of it. Like had it been like going back to the Notebook example, had it been, oh gosh, what's his name, Noah, writing like angry letters to Allie for like years, like about how he's like upset and just like wants to be with her, and like this isn't right and this is not how it's supposed to go. Like no one would want those letters. Like that is not, like, no, like that's all about you. That's, that's not romantic. What's romantic is just kind of that quiet, I'll be there for you. I don't know. I guess we sort of get that in the fourth season, but to me, it still comes across pretty petulant, and maybe that's just because of everything that's already preceded it, so it was kind of hard to walk back on that. And I just think at the end of the day, it just comes back to their chemistry for me not really flowing, but that's such a subjective thing because I know that I'm sure some people would say that the Dawson and Joey characters have good chemistry in the same way that The Summer I Turned Pretty, that's like the concurrent love triangle that I see stuff about. And every time I watch it, I'm like, oh my gosh, Belly and Conrad have such good chemistry, and like Belly and Jeremiah not so much. And then there'll be other people that think the exact opposite. So it's hard to really put your finger on what chemistry is if it's so, if it varies so much person to person. But I think Joey and Pacey get more sweet moments. I honestly think they get better written moments too. Like maybe there are moments that are sweet between Dawson and Joey, but like I really feel like they had this like weird thing in the show with them like being soulmates. And I just like, what does that mean? Like it was about them being best friends and being soulmates because they grew up together. I don't know. I guess it's supposed to say that they had so many shared memories together. But here's what's hard about making that believable to the audience is that we meet them at the same time that we meet all the other characters. So while they'll call back to like, oh, when you were 7 and you did this for me, like we weren't there for that. And so I feel like it just doesn't really hit home. I'm trying to think if there are other examples of shows where there's like a childhood love story and it's like you're so invested in it. I don't think so, only because I feel like those would be more like you were close in childhood and then you come back together later as adults. I mean, there's like Corey and Topanga. I need to do a video about Boy Meets World. That'd be a fun one because I feel like that's a really sweet one. But that show is so much more a comedy and not a drama, and I think that's why it works, is because they're able to be silly together. And yeah, that's a good example. Corey and Topanga, you're always rooting for them. But again, our main character is Corey, and he's just kind of silly, happy-go-lucky in a lot of ways, and Topanga's, this like beautiful girl out of his league that's so smart, and so it's like it's a sweet thing that they end up together. I wonder if like Topanga was the main character, if it would have felt a little different. And I say this because again, at this point in the dynamic, it kind of feels like Joey was the main character, and therefore just Dawson just didn't seem like a great choice when she could have been with Pacey instead. Like there was a better version, and so if it was Topanga and there was like another guy, would no, but Corey's so sweet. Like I still feel like you would have wanted them to be together. So maybe the secret is just in the lightness of the dynamic, at least for me. Like, we talk a lot about nostalgia here, and it does feel like the lightness of a dynamic is what draws you in, or it reminds you of being a child, what reminds you of what you imagine a relationship would be like and how fun it would be. And I feel like that's more what the show's trying to accomplish. Whereas Dawson and Joey, it's like they're going for this childhood nostalgia thing and then also this epic drama romance. And I just don't think those two things gelled very well together. I don't know if childhood soulmates works when you're also going for like teenage intensity. Yeah, I'll see if I can think of another example other than Boy Meets World, but that one makes me think that there's a right way to do the dynamic and they didn't do it like that. Yeah, there's also just the idea in the show of like, in The Summer I Turned Pretty, I think we'll be faced with this as well, which is like, how do you um like how do you make the audience want two people as adults to be together who were like teenage boyfriend girlfriend or whatever? Like that's just not really like the magnum opus for most people, and so they have to kind of force you to believe that that's what they would want. So I think that's why a lot of shows flash forward and you're supposed to see them at very different points in their life and how they're still compatible. I don't think many shows do this very well. I think it'd just be really hard to. I think that's why it's easier to just let the ending be unknown in a way. I wrote my first book last year, and it's a coming of age story, and there's like a first love story, and I thought I would do an epilogue, to kind of flash forward to give you that closure, because I love that when I read like a book that I love and I love the characters, I want to see like where they go, where they end up. Like that's the best part. But when you're writing it, you're like, I just can't do it justice because I'm gonna be narrowing it in too much at the end, and you kind of want the end to be full of possibilities and to be this like exciting breath of fresh air, not like everything tied up in a neat bow. At least that's how I feel, and so I'm curious how many people would watch the end of Dawson's Creek and be like, wow, that's incredible. The other interesting thing about that, and this kind of plays back into the original idea because I feel like I've gotten on such tangent, is that Kevin Williamson, one of those names. He's the guy that made the Scream movies, funnily enough. And he's the creator of Dawson's Creek. So he was on the first couple seasons and then left to go do some movies and came back to like direct the very last. Did he direct it? Did he write it? I don't know. The very last episode. And so he's like tasked with the job of picking which boy she ends up with, which is just so funny because all of these twists and turns throughout all of the seasons. And to me, it seems clear that something went awry on the show. They lost the map a little bit because he came in with his original idea that the soulmates were going to be together. And I don't know if it's like he talked to the people on set or he was watching back some of the episodes, but then realized, yeah, that didn't make any sense, unfortunately. Like, that was not going to happen. And I wonder, him being the creator of the show, like, oh, was he disappointed that he couldn't have his ending? Like, it just didn't make any sense at all, I don't think, to put those two together, unfortunately, for him. So I would imagine that would be quite the bummer, but yeah, he ends up writing it in such a way that Joey and Pacey end up together. And I think it made perfect sense. So I liked the ending for that. Like, I think it was authentic to where the show ended up. But it is pretty weird that you can go into a show with a very clear idea of how you're going to end. And whether it be, the actors or the writers or whatever, that dynamic shift be, you can't accomplish that goal. And I think Pacey is kind of the example of that. His character started off as, they called him like the John Belushi character. He was just supposed to be like the funny best friend. And I love this example because I think it's, I don't know, I think it's a testament to good acting is that you can be brought on as the funny best friend, because he, I think, auditioned for Dawson and they gave him Pacey instead. And, you maybe don't have exactly what they're looking for the lead guy. They had some other vision in mind. But then he stole the show, like he really took the funny best friend to this heartfelt, sincere, charming level that it was really never intended to be. I think that's really special about the show, and I think that's why I like it, because it feels a little bit subversive is probably not the right word, like it's a super formulaic love triangle show, but a little bit subverting your expectations when the show is set up a certain way and it does something different. It kind of reminds me of when I talked about Seth Cohen in the OC, how his character is like quietly subversive to the whole OC pretty, drama show, and he's kind of this like, I mean, he's still pretty, but he's supposed to be less pretty, different kind of pretty, and sarcastic and not so California kid, and how that makes the show just a lot more interesting. And I think Pacey is that for Dawson's Creek. I think it makes a show that is very melodramatic end up feeling really nostalgic and heartwarming and relatable. And I love that because I'm not one to just, yeah, sit and watch dramas over and over. They got to have some humor in them for me to really feel connected to it, or for it to be something that I like, feel some sort of aspirational tug towards. Again, that Hallmark-esque idea that, wow, everything could actually be more than it seems like it is, right? There could be this big, beautiful life. I think that's what nostalgia TV does at its best. So thank you, Pacey Witter, for stealing the show.